Welcome back, everyone, to our classroom called the College of Glycation. I'm Paul Reynolds, a biomedical scientist and professor of cell biology and physiology. And today we're tackling a topic that hits at the heart of your daily choices. And this class will be called Dietary Glycation, how food choices impact age formation. If you caught our earlier episodes on glycation, you know it's a chemical process that's quietly wreaking havoc on your body. Today, we are building on that, zooming in on how the foods that we eat and how we cook them fuel advanced glycation end products or AGEs, and what that means to your health. We'll unpack endogenous glycation versus exogenous glycation, and we'll also explore how processed foods, sugars, and cooking methods drive this mess. And we'll also share some practical tips to cut down on dietary ages. As always, we'll lean into peer-reviewed science, so you'll hear a lot of references as we go. So let's get started. Your kitchen is about to get a metabolic makeover. So let's start with a quick refresher on glycation because it's the foundation of this story. Glycation is a non-enzymatic reaction. Basically, what that means is there's no enzyme that's required to do what we're talking about. And this non-enzymatic reaction is where sugar molecules like glucose or fructose bind onto proteins, lipids, or even your nucleic acids. No enzymes, no control, just sugar sticking to your body's building blocks, like gum on the bottom of your shoe. The result here is advanced glycation end products or AGEs, which are stable, damaging compounds that accumulate and cause trouble over time. This isn't a new idea. I've referenced Dr. Maillard many times in this course, and he described it in 1912, over a century ago, noting how sugars and proteins form brownish compounds when they are heated. By the 1980s, another paper I've referenced many times, Monnier and Cerami, linked ages to aging processes and disease. So today we know that ages drive inflammation, oxidative stress, and many pathologies across the body, from diabetes, which we talked about last week, to heart disease the week before. And here's a key point. Your diet plays a massive role in how many ages you need to deal with from day to day. Ages are like molecular troublemakers. They form irreversible crosslinks with proteins like collagen, which is long lasting. And in the process, it stiffens your tissue and impairs function. They also bind to the receptor for ages or RAGE, triggering inflammation and oxidative stress. A few years ago, in 2017, there was a review published in the Journal of Traditional and Complementary Medicine, and the authors outlined how ages contribute to diabetic complications, cardiovascular disease, and even a host of neurodegenerative disorders. In blood vessels, glycated collagen reduces elasticity, in the process raising your blood pressure. In the brain, ages disrupt neuronal signaling, potentially fueling Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. In 2019, a study performed, or rather published, in the journal Diabetes and Metabolism by Fishman and colleagues showed that ages correlate with diabetic complications, including neuropathies and nephropathies, driven by this chronic inflammatory process we've talked about at length. Now, this isn't just about chronic disease. Ages, in fact, affect everyone. It is always occurring. They accelerate aging by damaging long-term proteins or long-lived proteins like skin collagen and skin elastin, leading to wrinkles, thin skin, and fragility. In fact, people look older than they actually are when glycation is rampant. Another publication made available in 2021 in the International Journal of Molecular Sciences found that ages impair rather cellular repair by disrupting autophagy. That is the body's cleanup system of rejuvenation. The more ages in your system, the more inflammation, and therefore the more oxidative stress and the more pathology. And here's where your diet comes in, finally. Not all ages are made in the body. Some come straight from your plate. So let's talk about that. Glycation happens in two main ways. The first one is called endogenous glycation. That's what happens inside your body. The second one is called exogenous glycation, and that comes from your diet. Endogenous glycation is driven by blood sugar. When glucose or fructose stay high, say from insulin resistance or a sugar-heavy diet, sugars over time will bind to proteins and lipids, forming ages. And again, this is the type of glycation we've covered mostly so far in this College of Glycation podcast. A 2024 study just a few months ago in the British medical journal Endocrine Disorders showed that skin ages, and again, they measured that by skin autofluorescence, correlate with HbA1c levels in diabetes, reflecting this idea that internal glycation from poor glycemic control is an issue. This is why blood sugar control is so critical. But our focus today is exogenous glycation. Exogenous glycation, though, is where your food choices take center stage. I want to start by reminding you how important your liver is in modifying and adjusting your dietary intake. In fact, data show clearly that maybe only 10 to 30% of your ingested ages are actually retained and not eradicated by the liver, but it still is a source of ages that should not be totally ignored. So one established source of age formation comes from the way you cook your foods, especially if you cook at very high temperatures or utilizing certain cooking methods. In 2010, there was a study in the Journal of the American Diabetic Association. Authors were Irabari and colleagues. They quantified this basic assumption that foods cooked with dry heat, that's over grilling, frying, roasting, those types of methods, have far higher ages than those foods that are boiled or steamed. For example, a fried chicken breast has up to 10 times the ages compared to a poached chicken breast. Processed foods are another culprit. In fact, I believe they are the biggest culprit. Sugary snacks, sodas, those that have refined carbohydrates like white bread are loaded with sugars that fuel glycation processing in your body. In 2015, there was a study in food chemistry by Wei and colleagues, and they found that high fructose corn syrup in processed foods accelerates age formation, both in the food that's ingested and in your bloodstream after eating. Now, exogenous ages, as I've mentioned, are absorbed in your gut, but again, only about 10 to 30% will actually make it into your bloodstream. And that's related to a published article in 2017 that I've mentioned earlier, the Journal of Traditional and Complementary Medicine Review. Now, once there, the ages act like endogenous ages, so there's no difference whether they were ingested or formed within the body. And therefore, they will bind rage, triggering inflammation and damaging susceptible tissues. In 2023, there was a study in nutrients, and the authors showed that high age diets increased serum age levels as well as inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein, even in healthy people. You may recall discussion about C-reactive protein before. That is a molecule that circulates in the systemic vasculature, which many believe is a key marker of overall inflammation. So this means that your daily burger or sugary latte isn't just a calorie bomb, it's also a glycation grenade. So let's break down the biggest dietary age culprits, cooking methods, processed foods, and sugars. First, let's talk about cooking methods in a bit more detail. High temperature, dry heat methods, again, you're thinking of over grilling, over frying, or barbecuing, creates a Maillard reaction, the same process that browns your steak or crisps your fries. It's tasty, but it's an age factory. 15 years ago, in 2010, in the Journal of the American Diabetic Association, they listed age content in over 500 foods. They looked at grilled meats, fried bacon, and roasted nuts. Those were the age heavyweights. In contrast, steaming, poaching, or slow cooking kept ages low. For example, in that publication, they found that boiled eggs have a fraction of the ages compared to fried eggs. So processed foods are another problem. They're often pre-cooked at high temperatures or packed with sugars that promote glycation. Think fast food, packaged snacks, or sugary cereals. A few years ago in 2022, a study was published in the Frontiers of Nutrition. The authors were Semba et al., or friends and colleagues, and they found that ultra-processed foods contribute significantly to dietary ages, correlating with higher serum age levels and abundant oxidative stress in adults. High fructose corn syrup, common in sodas and sweets, is especially bad. It's more reactive than glucose, this high fructose corn syrup. Dietary sugars also drive endogenous glycation. Eating refined carbohydrates, again, you're imagining white bread, pasta, candy, all those types of foods will spike your blood sugar, fueling age formation inside your body. Last year, in 2024, a study in the Journal of Diabetes Research by Vanderheyden and colleagues showed that high glycemic diets, again, processed foods, ultra-processed carbohydrates, those types of foods increase skin ages, even in non-diabetics. And they do so by raising blood glucose and fructose levels in the body. Fructose is, again, particularly nasty. It glycates proteins 10 times faster than glucose. So that daily soda or the energy drink, again, it is not empty calories. It's a glycation accelerator. So how do you fight back? Well, here are some practical science-based ways to cut dietary ages without losing your love for food. First, let's rethink some of the cooking methods. Steaming, poaching, or slow cooking instead of grilling or frying. I think you can still have some grilled or fried foods, but keep them at a minimum comparatively. In 2010, in the Journal of the American Diabetic Association, there was again a study published that showed that moist heat cooking slashes ages by up to 80%. Again, contrast the dry heat that comes from grilling with moist heating that comes from steaming and poaching. Again, 80% reduction in age accrual when you use moist heat. For example, if you swap grilled chicken for a slow cooker stew, marinating meats in acidic ingredients like lemon or vinegar before cooking may also reduce age formation. And that was shown in a recent publication in the Journal of Traditional and Complementary Medicine. You can see that reference in the show notes. The second thing we can do is, again, ditching ultra-processed foods. Choose whole foods, vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains over packaged snacks or fast food. If you're eating food that comes in a box that has a code on the back or a wrapper, you're not doing it right. In 2022, a journal publication in the venue Frontiers of Nutrition found that diets rich in fresh foods lower serum ages and inflammation. So if you're craving a sweet product, reach for fruit over a candy bar. It's lower in reactive sugars and packed with antioxidants that can minimize oxidative stress. The third thing you can do is cutting refined sugars and high glycemic carbohydrates. Opt for low glycemic foods like berries, leafy greens, or other such products to stabilize blood sugar and reduce endogenous glycation. The 2024 Journal of Diabetes research study that I mentioned before showed that low glycemic diets decrease skin ages and improve metabolic markers. So there are multiple ways to get about this age minimizing effort. Limit fructose heavy foods like sodas, processed desserts, and your liver and your proteins will thank you. Finally, let's boost anti-age nutrients. This isn't talked about as much in the form of glycation, but these are some nutrients that you've all heard of. Antioxidants like vitamin C, polyphenols, those things found in berries, tea, and dark chocolate, and alpha lipoic acid may inhibit age formation or neutralize their effects. And that was shown in 2023. A journal article published in the Venue Nutrients noted that polyphenol-rich diets reduce age-induced inflammation. While supplements are indeed promising, whole foods are your best bet until more human studies can confirm dosing. So let's step back and look at the history for just a moment about this dietary glycation phenomenon. I've already mentioned Dr. Maillard's work in 1912. Again, his focus was what happens to amino acids when you apply heat, and they brown and they crust and they caramelize. And that really got the ball rolling into this whole story of glycation. Now, in the 2010s, fast forward about a century, we had greater focus on processed foods with research like from Dr. Wei in 2015. Their study highlighted high fructose corn syrup's role. So we've come full circle, but still adhering to this idea of the ills of glycation. Now, recent trends are eye-opening. Non-invasive tools like skin autofluorescence now can measure age accumulation in a tissue beyond your hemoglobin or your A1C. And that was shown again in the British Medical Journal article I referenced earlier in this episode. These foods confirm that high-age diets increase tissue ages even in healthy people. Research is also currently exploring anti-age interventions. The 2023 nutrient study tested low-age diets, finding reduced inflammation and improved sensitivity. Meanwhile, the rise of ultra-processed foods, now over 60% of our American diet, is a problem. And that was referenced in the 2022 article, Frontiers of Nutrition, a study that found that those high ultra-processed foods that we indulge in is driving age exposure even higher. As obesity and diabetes climb, dietary glycation is a growing public health issue. Our modern food environment is an age-related perfect storm. High sugar diets, processed snacks, and high heat, dry heat cooking methods dominate. The 2017 article in the Journal of Traditional and Complementary Medicine, again, that notable review, reviewed Western diets, and they in fact deliver 10 to 100 times more ages than traditional diets that are based on steaming or even raw foods. This isn't just a science problem, it's a cultural problem. But the good news is that you can buck the trend with smarter choices. So here is the bottom line. Your food choices directly impact age formation, inflammation, and long-term health. In fact, as you know, food choices matter. Dietary glycation through cooking methods, processed foods, and sugars will fuel endogenous but also exogenous glycation, driving many pathologies to get worse, from diabetes to heart disease to skin disorders. But you're not powerless. Remember, swap frying foods for steaming, processed snacks for whole foods, and sugary drinks for water or tea. These small changes will notably cut your age accrual or age dietary impact, therefore reducing inflammation and slowing the damage of glycation. Your plate is a battlefield, and every meal is a chance to fight back. Thank you, one and all, for joining me today. I'll see you next time in a follow-up episode. Remember, stay sharp and stay healthy.